person, they asked if they could get paid, and I was like, oh shit, you know, like, this is really sensitive topics.
I'm gonna crash out, guys. You would not have this issue in the first place. You would not be in this position if you were just going to pay Fen. Here you can see the AI generated image has just been painted over. A lot of aspects are really similar. Like this hand that was kept for the sword looks exactly the same. But here we have screenshots of Ross making a conscious decision to feed images into Midjourney, especially from other pro artists and IPs to guide his creative process and style while trying to claim it as his own. I appreciate your great work you've done for the booth and my brand. Good luck on your endeavors. By the way, again on the front thing, if you say revert to distant acquaintances, then it means you currently were not distant acquaintances, so you guys were friends. That trip was a nightmare. RossDraws publicly humiliated me multiple times in public as well as in small private businesses, and he is now misrepresenting a private conversation we had. But also he's misleading people into thinking he wasn't close with Fen, making Fen look like he was some nosy, pushy superfan, but in actuality they were friends and he used to talk to him on a personal level about personal things regularly. RossDraws made another response because people weren't satisfied with the first one. And then Fennec Soul, so the person who made the original expose on Ross, made another expose. So we're gonna get into this because this is so messy. And I did not think I was gonna make another video about this because I did not think Ross was gonna make another announcement, but here we are. So this is the video in question. Ross posted this video 7 days ago, and don't worry, we're gonna get into it. But first up, you might be like, Kat, why didn't you make a video immediately afterwards? Well, you know, I could have and milked YouTube ad revenue, but Fennec Soul did make a tweet on Twitter stating that they were going to be out and they were going to put out their response to that response in a week's time. So Fennec's response came out yesterday. So I was just waiting for Fenn's response to make this full video so I didn't have to make like 10 different parts to this as everything was coming out. Now, I do want to add another 2 cents real quick because people were making comments about like other people's videos about RossDraws. So one thing that I do want to add in when it comes to expose videos and like situations that happen and then people who make response videos, and this is like no flame to the person involved really. This video made by Sam Does Arts was sent to me multiple times, and Sam basically made a video about Ross stating that he was on Ross's side, like go Ross basically. And everybody's entitled to their opinion. I will just state also that we do need to keep in mind sometimes when people have like skin in the game, and Sam in his video was like, Ross was my idol. I looked up to Ross my entire career. Ross inspired me. So, you know, of course, there's going to be a little bit of bias when it comes into like if somebody was your idol and then they did something potentially wrong, right, with lying about AI usage, that you would be biased towards them. And also, I will also add that Sam has every benefit to not shit on Ross because they are co-workers in the same space. And you might be like, well, Kat, aren't you in the same space? I'm not. I am not in the art community. I am adjacent because I do drama content. Actually, as a result, a lot of art creators don't like me because I do drama content. So I don't have skin in this game because none of these people really like or care about me. But if you really don't want to be shitting on another big creator in your space, in your industry that you were on a panel with, you know? So I do want to add that just because people kept sending it to me, everybody's entitled to their thoughts, and Sam's thoughts about Ross are completely valid because those are Sam's opinions. Let's get into the meat and bones of things, which is Ross's video.
And also take accountability where I see fit.
So Ross makes a sit down video basically in a very different style than his normal videos, and I will summarize it for you, but I truly implore you to go watch the video so you can hear the words out of his own mouth. Obviously, everything that I say will be a summary, and there might be colored biases because I am summarizing it, and some of you guys may know how I kind of stand on this situation already. But of course, I'm going into this with an open mind because we are receiving new information, and sometimes things do change with the new information you get. By the way, in Ross's video breakdown, he's very emotional in it. He uses a lot of emotional appeal, and everything that I will say will be ignoring the emotional appeals that he adds in his video. This is just me personally, but I am not an emotional person, so when people make emotional appeals, it actually kind of does the opposite effect for me personally, because I have had experiences with emotional people in my past, like trying to manipulate me using emotion, and I just kind of sit there and I'm like, bro, I hear the words coming out of your mouth and the math is not mathing to me. So I do want to add that the emotional appeal is not going to be in my summary. So at around the 1:30 mark, he basically states that he clears up the AI allegations and he wants to ignore petty drama, which is what he refers to it.
And I thought to just address the AI experimentation in my work and then let the petty drama kind of like do its thing, because it's drama, you know? People like just discourse and drama naturally.
So this is likely referring to the first response that he made because a criticism that I had of him in my previous video was, bro, your response did not clear up like any allegations minus the AI. That was the only thing you addressed. And in my personal opinion, the AI addressing that he did was a lie. In that document, he stated that he used AI in 5 pieces, which we know is not true because of the proof that came out. So he is stating that he put out that response because he felt the AI accusations were the most important and that everything else could kind of be like looked over. In my personal opinion, the allegations that were made against him were not really necessarily petty drama. I would state petty drama is maybe somebody, being like, oh, you're annoying. Okay, that's like a subjective thing. I am annoying to many people. There will always be people that will find you annoying. You're just not their cup of tea. That's totally fine. But there were accusations of other things like racism and not paying employees and, mistreating animals. But I feel like if somebody accuses you of being a racist who doesn't pay your employees, that is not really petty to me. And then he spends like 2 minutes being very emotional. And then at around 3:30, he calls himself a human punching bag. So at the 4 minute and 15-second mark, he spends about 8 minutes giving a background on Fennec Soul, which is the person that made the original call out about Ross. So he stated that Fen was a fan that Ross himself stated that he generously let more into his life, that Fen volunteered to fly to LA to help for Lightbox and ask for housing. And Ross was hesitant because of logistics. Around here, Ross was also showing screenshots as well. So here in the screenshot that is shown, we see this was October 3rd, 2021. Ross says, when are you buying dinner? Ross says, LOL. And then Fen says, you'll be in the area. And then Fen says, day 288, day 289, day 290. So you're buying me dinner tomorrow, day 291. It does look like Fen is sending Ross a whole bunch of messages that is kind of being ignored. I just want to add this too, and this is just me personally because I do have ADHD. The relationship between Ross and Fen is something that really only them two will know. Like only Ross and Fen will know how close or how not close they were because we do have these screenshots that do show it makes it look like Fen is spamming in the DMs. I will also say if you grab screenshots between me and my friends out of context, it would also look like my friends are massive fans of me and up in my DMs when in reality, because I have ADHD, people with ADHD have like zero object permanence. So if you're not directly in front of my face, I often will forget you exist and you might just end up having one-sided conversations in my DMs or my texts. Doesn't mean that I don't like you. In fact, I did that to my boyfriend where I really liked him and I would just not respond. And our texts would look like this sometimes because I forgot. I got busy and because you weren't directly in front of my face, I forgot you existed as a human being. So I do want to add that it could go both ways. There's a lot more context than just like a couple of screenshots like this could add.
I thought I could kind of pay it forward, and this was my way of doing that. I messaged back and I started chatting with this person, having conversations about art. Every now and then, I think they would try and push a little bit to see how much information they could get.
By the way, I just want to add a little bit more context. Ross was basically stating that Fen was a fan that was always up in their comment section and DMs, and he was like, yeah, I can do this person a favor by like bringing them more into the art world. So I gave them a favor and let them more into my life. I'm just gonna add, I clearly sound very biased because I am. I don't know either of these people. I have watched Ross in the past, so honestly, I should be more on Ross's side, right? Like I own one of his art books, as much of a fan that I am, but when this stuff came out, I was just looking at it and I was like, dude, you're giving me like so many red flags. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this video as like unbiased as possible, but this is like my 3rd video. And if you guys have seen previous videos of mine, when videos get a little long, I start crashing out at the end sometimes because I just lose my mind. I personally want to add at this point, and again, maybe I'm reading too much into it. I really do want to add like clarity to my biases, but the way that Ross talks in this video, this is just me personally, but it's because I have heard this from people in my life, and there's a reason why I don't have people like that in my life anymore. Like the kind of, I am doing you a huge favor. Like I thought I could be the one that changes his career. Some spidey sense in my brain is the alarms are ringing a little bit. For me personally, as somebody who is a creator, and I've been a full-time creator for a long time, I've been creating for over 6 years, right? I get people who are very pushy, who want to further their relationship with me and weasel their way in. I get it, right? I just ignore you. Like, if I don't want to be friends with you, that's it. I will not let you into my life, point blank, period. But again, I do understand that some people are much more of a people pleaser than others, and I am just not that type of person. So maybe it's just me, but to me, it's kind of like, well, just say no. You do wield all the power in this dynamic because you are the bigger creator. You can just ignore them. But yeah, so here we have some DMs between Fen and Ross. This is now in 2023 at the end. And Fen says, Ross, can I ask a personal question? I mean, I'm gonna, but I figured I'd be polite. Ross says, LOL, sure. Fen says, are you redacted? And then Fen says, LML, wasn't expecting that one. Ross says, bro, I think it's too personal for me. Sorry. And Fen says, LMAO, fine.
Kind of like go into personal life territory, and it would make me feel a little
And then here Fen says, this is now at the end of 2024, bro, I swear you're either effing redacted something. Be honest, did you smash? Asking Ross about their sex life. So again, asking people about their sex lives, very interesting line to walk with a lot of nuances, because you do need to be close to that person to ask questions like this. If you are not close to them and you start prompting these questions out of the blue, you are weird, point blank, period. I would be very uncomfortable if out of the blue, people that I'm not close to ask me questions like this. I don't want to victim blame, right? If Ross is the victim here. I would say though, like, if Fen prompted you with like a question about your sex life and you were uncomfortable with it, but why did you not block him? Again, I do get in scenarios, some people, they are very easy to back up. You know what I mean? Like, they give a lot for other people because they're very much a people pleaser, etc. I don't know if Ross is this type of person. I literally don't know this, bro, right? I don't know Fen either. Did not know Fen existed prior to this whole situation coming down. I mean, to me, it's always just a little odd, because if like somebody asked me a question like this about my sex life or whatever, and if I wasn't comfortable with it, you're gonna be blocked. But again, typically for me, it would never even get this far in the first place, because if I don't like you, I will not interact with you. That's just how I am as a person. But yeah, that's just me. So here Ross adds some screenshots about the conversation about the convention, where Fen is basically stating, hey, if I drop in for a weekend, fly out to LA, help you with Lightbox, could you also provide housing for me? Ross says, fine, you can sleep on my couch. Fen says, fucking bet, let's go. Ross says, LMAO, okay, let me get you a real answer in a few hours. Is that cool? I don't want to be impulsive. And Fen says, listen, I also don't want to be impulsive, but I won't get it far playing it safe. I'll be asleep in a few hours, but I'm high-key gonna buy that plane ticket while it's 220 bucks. Ross says, and Fen says, I also have the time off. Ross. And Ross says, I'm not sure yet about the couch thing. And Fen says, why not? I'll bring a sleeping bag and sleep in the corner. And Ross basically, they go back and forth about this. And Ross is hesitant to host Fen because Ross is like, oh, hosting people is a lot of work, a lot of time and effort. I don't know if I want to do that because I wanted to like relax a little bit. It's a lot to host people. And Fen is like, oh, why not? Like, I'm your biggest supporter. Like, it'll be really chill. I'll bring a sleeping bag, etc. So the way that this is presented kind of is like Ross is showing that Fen is pushy, that Fen is pushing boundaries, etc. I would just say, if this is me personally, if somebody was offering to volunteer for something and I did not want them to volunteer, I would just say no. So again, a lot of the things that Ross does in this situation, I personally cannot relate to. None of what he did is anything that I would ever do, right? If I was communicating with somebody and they volunteered to help, if I did not like you, I personally would not say, fine, you can sleep on my couch. I would just say no. If they were somebody that I did like, I would be like, oh, fine, you can come over and crash on my beanbag, etc. And again, I do want to empathize. Hosting people is a lot of work. And, Fen is like, oh, why not? It's no big deal, etc. Right? Like, and I know Fen is like probably, trying to make sure they can get themselves in. But it is a lot of work to host people. I don't like hosting people because it's a lot of work. Unless I'm very close to you, then yeah, like crash on my beanbag, chill, There was one time that there was a girl that I'm friends with and we were at a party and then her friend's car got towed. She came with a friend, so that was her only vehicle. I was like, I will come pick you up right now. You can come sleep on my couch, like sleep on my beanbag. And in the morning, I'll drop you off at where your friends are. I offered that because I like her. Okay. Like, it wasn't like in Chinese culture, if you guys are Chinese, it's 客气, right? It's like polite. So in Chinese culture, the 客气 is you would say things that you don't really mean. If somebody's offering you a red envelope, it's 客气 to say no. Like, in Chinese culture, you got to deny it first, and then they will offer again, and then you can take it. It's like a whole game you play. I hate it. It drives me insane because I'm a very direct person. But yeah, I offered my housing for her because I like her, and I don't want a girl on the street by herself, okay? Girl code. I don't want to do that. If I didn't like her, I would have just been like, oh, hopefully you guys can get a hotel. I'm gonna go to sleep. But I like her, so of course I'm gonna offer her. Like, you know what I mean? Just, I would never offer my housing if I didn't actually like you as a person. Like, the way that Ross is framing it is like, I felt pressured to house him. If any of you guys are people pleasers, maybe you can let me know the perspective more. I really want to be empathetic, but it's just not something that I would ever do, so I just can't see into it. So then they basically go back and forth on this, right? Where like Ross is like again laying out his hesitations, oh, can you find your own ride? I can pay for lunch and dinners, da 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 da. And then Fen is trying to convince Ross. And then Ross says, I don't know, just say, okay, I'm down to have you. I'll put out my story that the position's filled. Fen says, let's go. Ross says, don't make me regret this. Fen says, have I given you a reason to regret anything I do? I wouldn't be here if you didn't trust me. And Ross says, you've got moves.
We never solidified any talks about payment details before his second convention, AX 2024. Before he came here, I toyed with the idea of possibly having him join us for Comic Con 2024 at the end of that month, which are the screenshots in his doc. The screenshots in Fenn's doc shows me and him bantering. We were talking very casually about important matters. I feel like in his doc, the casual conversation was snipped. He left out some of his banter, which showed more color to our dynamic. But again, after reflecting, I understand that these are sensitive topics and I need to be more aware of the situation and do my part in making sure it was solidified. So after these talks about possibly hosting him for July, some time has passed and I realized I did not want to host him for an entire month. Considering hosting is a lot of energy and effort. I don't know him very well and it's convention season. I want to make sure I have enough alone time as much as possible to recharge. Instead, for Comic Con 2024, we found 2 local people and I did pay them. Every time Fenn has worked with us, we provided lodging. These 2 people were local and did not need lodging.
Again, the previous stuff about Fen, I just wanted to add, was just because in the video, Ross kept painting it as if he didn't know Fen very well. Like, I didn't know him very well. He literally said that right there. I did not know Fen very well. I didn't know him. Maybe it's just me, right? Because again, we have 2 sides of the story, and Ross's side is stating that he did not know Fen well. Fen states that they knew each other. They were friends, right? Maybe Ross just has like the worst boundaries in the entire world and cannot say no to save his life. But the actions speak louder than words to me, and it's like, if you didn't like this person, why do you keep DMing them? Like, DMing is a two-way street, and if you never responded again, Fen would probably stop talking to you, like, years ago. He kept making it seem like he didn't like Fen, he didn't want, they weren't friends, etc. But Fen's been like in your DMs for years and you're responding enthusiastically. Then number 2, Fen is volunteering to fly out to help you for this con because you posted about needing help. You were the one that offered your couch, and maybe it was a joke and he didn't mean it. But again, I just can't relate to that. If I didn't mean for you to come stay over at my house, like, I know that if I joke about you sleeping on my couch, I am now opening the door for this idea to go into your head. Why open with that? That is just what's very confusing to me. Because Ross stating that they weren't close, Ross is painting Fen as like a pushy fan. A pushy fan would never end up in my house. I'm just saying that. But here, I personally did not like this, what Ross said here. Because he said, Fen and I never agreed to payment, or we never discussed payment terms. That's chill. In my personal opinion, this is me, I pay everybody that works for me because I feel so immoral and dirty if I don't pay you for your work and labor. My ethics and morals about payment extend beyond that. To me, even if somebody lives in a different country, I will still pay you the rate that is fair for me, for where I live, okay? So even if I were to hire somebody that lives in, I don't know, Europe, the Philippines, Southeast Asia, wherever, I will still pay you what is the fair rate for like an American doing your job because I live in America. I personally think that morally, ethically paying people or purposely seeking out labor in a second, third world country so the US dollar could go further so you can save more money, it feels wrong for me to do it. I just don't even like that. This is a whole tangent, but that to me just already feels gross. So, but here, right, where Ross stating that they never discussed payment, that is a true statement. You guys never did. If somebody is offering to volunteer to help you at a convention, maybe in Ross's moral code, it's volunteer, so he's good to not pay him. Regardless if somebody volunteered or not, come on, like, you have to know in the position that you stand in as a big creator and a big artist who makes a bunch of money, people are gonna volunteer their services to you all the time. And like, you may not technically be in the wrong to say yes, it will still feel, at least to me and my moral compass, I would not feel comfortable doing that because you're making a bunch of money and you know that you could not do this without their labor, right? Like, being at the convention is a lot of work, etc., yada, yada, yada. He has a big booth and he wants to be on so that he is happy and presentable when fans come up to him. So that's why he wants help at the booths so that he can be on and like, because interacting with all those people, it drains your social battery real fast. I've been at conventions, I've done the shebang. He says that he needs the help so he can be on for his fans. You need these people to help you, so you should pay them. Even if they offer to volunteer, in my personal opinion, you should still pay them. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. If somebody offers to volunteer for you at a convention and you will make a good amount of money from it, is it morally okay for you to not pay them? Because they're technically they volunteered. Or should you still pay them because that's just fair to do for people who are offering you time and for their services? Just would love to hear your thoughts. But here he stated, for Comic-Con, I opted to take 2 local employees, and because they were local, I paid them.
Instead, for Comic-Con 2024, we found 2 local people, and I did pay them. Every time Fen has worked with us, we provided lodging.
Here, he says, every time Fen has worked with us, we provided lodging. I'm gonna crash out, guys. Because what do you mean? He makes it sound like because Fen was out of town, he then doesn't need to pay Fen. Because Fen is not local to LA. Sorry, bro. Regardless of whether Fen is local or not local, Fen still worked the con for you. Fen still worked your booth. Fen still did the exact same labor that somebody who lived in LA would do. In fact, Fen did more work because Fen had to travel. What does Fen living, I don't know, across the US, I don't know where Fen lives, have to do with him getting paid for his labor? I am so confused. Make this make sense. If you think it's too expensive for you to hire somebody that lives far away because you gotta cover their travel or whatever, right? If you do, then hire somebody local. Just never hire the person that lives far from you in the first place if it's too much. He was down to accept the free help because Fen was volunteering. But because other people were local, he was okay to pay the local people, but not Fen, the one who wasn't local. Make him actually, now that I think about it, I think Fen was from Canada. I don't even know, but Fen is not from California. I know that much.
People were local and did not need lodging. I wish we truly solidified business or payment talks before them coming here. That wasn't solidified, and they flew here, and then in person they asked if they could get paid, and I was like, oh shit, this is really sensitive topics.
I'm gonna crash out, guys. You would not have this issue in the first place. You would not be in this position if you were just going to pay Fen. Like, the reason why Ross is like, oh shit, I don't know what to do anymore, because he wasn't gonna pay Fen. And then because Fen was like, oh, the other people that were working this booth were talking about how much they were getting paid. And then I realized I wasn't getting paid. So I'm going to ask you, what's up with that? And then all of a sudden, oh shit, you were trying to get away with not paying one of your employees. And then now you were caught because the employee overheard that other people were getting paid. Do you see my expression right now?
I wish we could have ironed that out before you came here.
By the way, I also want to add the whole, I wish we could have ironed this out beforehand. It is your job as the person hiring Fen to talk about this. It is not Fen's job to ask.
After talking about it for a bit, we decided to pay them.
After talking about this for a bit, we decided to pay them? You mean after you got caught trying to not pay one of your workers at the convention, you realized you were in hot shit because you weren't going to pay them, but you got caught, so now you have to pay them. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, but this is just like absurd to me. But yeah, so basically Ross adds proof that Fen was paid, and he also goes on to list a whole bunch of other payments Fen received, like lunches, dinners, lodging, free merch. Fen asked for a badge for Lightbox, and he gave the Fen the Lightbox badge. To me, this is a whole load of baloney too, because like, if somebody is gonna help you at an event, you should pay for their food and their housing. Okay, I know Ross is not a company, he's a creator, but due to his size, he basically operates as a creator-run company, essentially. I worked at an esports org. I have worked at conventions for my org, okay? And the standard is your food is paid for, your lodging is paid for, and you get paid a salary. Because I have to be here because of you guys. You guys need me here for this convention for me to work it. So as a result, everything I need to survive should be covered, the basic necessities. I'm not asking for a limo to pick me up from the airport, okay? But you should at least cover gas or my electricity for my car, I guess, right? My food, I don't need much, but just, let me buy a hot dog at the convention and then something for dinner, okay? So my food and my housing. Again, I don't need anything extravagant. Just let me crash somewhere, okay? I'm chill. That's the bare minimum because they will not be there without this job. Like, they would not have to be here unless you hire them to be there. So that is like the bare minimum. So here Ross kind of paints it as like extra favors that Fen got paid for. You know, like, oh, he got all this extra stuff, but it's like the bare minimum. Also, like when I work at esports org, you just get free merch. If they have extra stuff, it's like kind of like, oh, you know, like, well, one, you do kind of need to wear the merch to rep the org or the company so that you fit in. But secondly, it's like we have this one other thing, just you just grab it, you know. It's never looked at as payment because you can't pay bills with a t-shirt.
Any free merch that he asked for, I'm pretty sure I honored.
But yeah, I would also say again, to me, like, this is a moot point because if he didn't want to give him free merch, that's chill, just say no. And I feel like a lot of what is said for this entire video actually, or the whole chunk where he's talking about Fen, where he's like, yeah, Fen is overstepping boundaries. Like, all of this would have stopped if he just said no. And maybe I just don't understand. In my opinion, you can't try to paint somebody as like a pushy fan or whatever if you equally contributed by saying yes to everything he asked for. Then you're gonna give Fen the impression that you guys are friends because you are agreeing to a bunch of stuff. Like, if you don't view Fen as a friend, but you agree to everything that basically friends would agree to, you know, responding back enthusiastically in DMs. He's like, "Oh, can I get a badge for Lightbox if you just happen to have an extra one?" And you say yes. And then, you know, like you offer to let him stay at your house. Wow, he's gonna think you're friends. We've covered other scenarios in the past where it's like when people are really pushy, to me, it's when you say no and they continue pushing. I have not seen that here yet, but maybe I'm misreading the situation, guys.
And the convention right after, which he wasn't a part of, he asked for a badge to attend, and I was like,
Yeah, it's like, "Oh, you don't know if you happen to have a spare badge, da, 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 da," like, risking one more time to see if you have a spare badge. These are the DMs, and Ross says, "Message Jeff." Again, if you didn't want to give a spare badge, just say no, right? But if you keep saying yes, then you're gonna give the impression that you're chill. You're chill to, like, you know, offer your services. You haven't given any other impression prior to this. And then a little bit of summaries here, because at about the 12:30 mark, Ross talks about not working at conventions. That was one of the accusations Fen made against Ross, stating that Ross was just never there. Like, he would piss off to nowhere, right? Ross says that he wants to take a step back so that he could be present for fans, of what I was talking about earlier about, you know, being overwhelmed. So he wants to be able to be on for his fans. I mean, the one time that I went to his booth like 2 years ago at AX, I saw him. So he was there. We'll have to say that. At the 13:30 mark, he shows toys for his dogs because there was an accusation that he was like not really taking care of his dog Milo, and that he stated that because Fen came over, he cleaned up all the dog toys and stuff. So the animal accusation is an accusation at the end of the day, and that is the one that is going to be the hardest to prove because unless there's proof, it is really he said, she said. And then at the 14:50 mark, Ross says that Fen came at him abruptly and out of the blue with a 16 bullet pointed list of things that he could improve on. So this is the list. This whole thing is completely censored. So here, Ross spends a long time talking about his boundaries, his healing, his space. I found the points that he was talking about kind of interesting here.
then out of the blue, boom, here's something that you need to work on. Even though I didn't agree with this method, maybe I do have some blind spots, and let me take some time to read it and see if there's anything valid, because at my core, I do want to become a better person. I try to improve every day, right? And so I thanked him for his passion, and I appreciated his, you know, kind of energy put into this because obviously he cares. After reflecting on the whole connection and seeing this, I do feel like it was pushing up against what I'm comfortable with. And I told him that I need to take a step back and revert to just internet acquaintances, and I need to protect my peace from all this because this stuff is like not for me. Maybe I wish I could have done a better job at like sensing you were going through something and reached out a hand and said, "Hey, these are some serious accusations. This is a lot of negativity. Let's have a voice call, let's have a video call and talk, or in person or something," right? But it just feels like a little sharp to feel like there's this case built behind your back of things like, all right, this, and then the tipping point, all right, boom, 20-page doc. Let's fuck him up.
For me, these were just very interesting because I get it, you know, like if somebody comes out of the blue with all list of like ways you can improve, you know, you're gonna get defensive. It's gonna feel like very out of the blue, etc. Like I would also say could be crazy people out there, right? But a lot of times when stuff like this happens, I'm just using myself as an example when it's like in a relationship, okay? Then I'm talking romantic. They're obviously, I don't know, friends, acquaintances, a fan, and the the big creator. I don't fucking know, man. Right? I wasn't there. I did that with an ex. Okay, I had an ex for 2 years in high school. Okay, and then out of the blue, at the very end of our this is like just under 2 years into our relationship, I hit him with something like that. A massive list of things he needed to improve on. Okay, and out of the blue, it could come really, really scary, hits you in the face like a brick, and you take 2 steps back and you get really defensive. You're like, what the fuck? It wasn't because I was going behind my ex's back, compiling a list of reasons why I didn't like him and wanted to, what, absolutely emotionally wreck his day, week, and month by hitting him with this massive list. No, it was because there were all of these little things over the course of our relationship that was building up resentment. Little things here and there, like how he would never prioritize me. And again, this is like high school relationship. This is like trivial stuff, right? But we were like high school sweethearts. So it was high school into college. But there was like, how he would never prioritize me, how he would want to hang out with his friends instead of me, how it felt like he never put in effort, how, he never gave me gifts. And I'm not a materialistic person, but like one time for Valentine's Day, he dug in the bottom of his backpack, found a green apple candy lollipop, and was like, "Oh, this is for you, I guess, because I forgot a gift for you. I don't even like sour things." So, stuff like that. It builds up over time. And I would bring it up and it would just get ignored. I would be like, "Yo, can you like give me some gifts or something? Like I want to feel loved. I want to feel appreciated." I would bring it up, ignored. I had an issue with one of his friends because he had this female friend that he made in college, and I can be a little jealous, I will admit. He talked about her a lot. And when they start talking about this one girl, like a lot, and you're kind of like, she doesn't belong in this conversation that we're talking about right now, but you somehow bring her into this conversation, that means you're thinking about her. My spidey senses were going off. I was right because they dated 5 days after we broke up. But anyways, so, I would bring that up too. And the reason why I hit him with this big old list is because over the 2 years of a relationship, everything that I brought up kind of felt like it was getting ignored. It kind of felt like it was getting brushed off. And that no matter what I brought up, all of those grievances, the problems weren't fixed, resolutions weren't brought to the table, so resentment built because the behavior would continue. So this could be a scenario where Fenn is absolutely crazy and hitting Ross out of the blue with this 16 bullet point list of how he can improve. Or it could be closer to a situation like me, because again, they've been talking since like 2021, where over time things were brought up like, hey, what about this? What about that? And all of the little things were completely ignored. And then now it built to this tipping point. I don't know. I'm not them. So then he talks about Mindy, where he basically states that at the time it was just him and her and that things were new. And he was making a lot of excuses, being like, things were hard. And then apologizes for not showing her enough appreciation. So then at around the 20-minute mark, he starts talking about Beazle. So Beazle is somebody that I mentioned in a previous video because in the accusation Fenn made against Ross, one of the accusations was that Ross's new character, young Ross or whatever he decided to name it, looked very, very similar to Beazle's OC. Beazle has an OC called Kid Beazle, which is supposed to be the child representation of him. It uses a lot of like analog motifs, etc., which is something that has never really been present in Ross's work ever, but has been a core element of Beazle's work. So Ross sits down and he starts talking about his character that he's been developing allegedly since 2021. He says the kid was named Kid, which is Beazle's character, because Beazle's character is named Kid Beazle. And Ross was like, oh, my character is named Kid, like Kid Ross. He didn't say Kid Ross, it was just named Kid, but like, because it's a younger representation of me. Ross is also like, being like, oh yeah, Beazle was talking about this, da 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 da. Beazle, up until this point, had never made an outright comment, so on socials, about him being the one that Ross had quote unquote copied off of, right? It was actually, I think I was the one who talked about it, because in Fenn's doc, Fenn didn't name Beazle either. So I might have stirred this pot. Oops. But you don't need to be a social media genius to go take a look at Ross's character and then take a look at Beazle's character and be like, wow, these look mad similar. So then there was this whole talk about a trip. So Ross and Beazle were in Japan together. And then Ross says they sat down on a curb and hashed their differences out because Beazle allegedly felt like Ross was copying him. And Ross says that Beazle did not want to believe him. So Ross was saying something like, oh, if I came out with my character and you came out with yours, I would celebrate your character, referring to, oh, like if I had Kid Ross first and then you came out with Kid Beazle, I wouldn't think that you're copying me. I would celebrate our two characters. And Beazle said, no, it's not the same, because Ross is a big creator and Beazle doesn't have millions of followers like Ross. So Beazle's point was, oh, it would not be the same because my character came first and your kid Ross will come out second. All of your fans would see Kid Ross. They wouldn't know that Kid Beazle came first, and they would all accuse me of copying you, and it would be detrimental to my career. Ross did not understand that.
Differences and have tough conversations. What's happening? If our characters both came out, I would celebrate you. I think it's so cool that we have a similar name. And they said if I came out with my character and they came out with their character, my community would come attack him and his character, and there would be some witch hunt. And I was like, what?
I would just say to this, like, I want to give benefit of doubt, but there's no way Ross is this Delulu, right? Like, there is no way you don't realize that because you have, like, I don't know, a collective, like, 1.5 mil followers across your social medias, that you have a much larger fan base than this other person. And Beazle, the other artist in this situation, would rightfully have a reason to be concerned for the integrity of their brands, a character they've had in their brand for a very long time, because of this whole potential copying allegation. People would take a look at Beazle's character and assume that Beazle was copying Ross. I can completely see how this could happen. And I don't know how Ross doesn't see that this could be a thing. Like, either you just live under a rock, which could be possible, or you do like an ounce of critical thinking and realize, hey, this is a really valid concern that this other creator would have.
I was really, I guess, taken aback because that did not even was a thought in my mind.
And yeah, of course it was not a thought in your mind. You are the bigger creator. And with more followers comes more social clout, and with more social clout comes credibility. Does it mean that you are credible? No, it just means that there will be more likely credibility to your name because you have social credibility of followers. So of course, if there were a situation of an accusation of potential copying between Ross and Beazle, most people would side with Ross just because he has more followers. That is straight up what is going to happen. And of course, you will be the person that will be in favor, so you will not think it's an issue. Like, it will never occur to you because you will never be the lesser person. I don't mean that Beazle's a lesser person, but in the power dynamic, you will always wield more power than Beazle. So of course you wouldn't see it.
I see these like kind of cancel culture, witch hunting things on Twitter all the time, and it's gonna happen. I guess my assessment now, being in this position, maybe he was trying to get ahead of it or something. I think commented on my plagiarizing retro nostalgia from him, and I'm like, okay, retro nostalgia is a genre, like fantasy and sci-fi. I'm a 90s kid. I grew up with Game Boys and Sega Dreamcasts, and like I grew up around this stuff. For my new project, which is so personal to me, I wanted to tap back into my childhood and what was present at the time. But I saw the look on his face and how his body was positioned and his energy level, and they were living in like a state of hurt and fear. And so, to protect the friendship and to keep the peace, I was like, hey, Beazle, I'm willing to change my character's name. And the look of relief on his face, he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, it was a temp name. I'm not really attached to it. And I was just trying to understand where this is coming from because it seems deeper than what it is. And we hugged it out, and I thought it was chill. Like, I'm trying to throw an olive branch and trying to, like, yo, look at how much I'm trying here and to care.
Guys, I'm gonna crash out. Okay, like, let's just take a look at Beazle's art. This is Beazle's very notable art style. Very heavy on the eye motifs, right? Wow, wow, take a look at that. Wow. Okay, and then we have Ross's art style, Take a look at Ross's art style, what he typically draws. It is very, very different. Very different. But then you suddenly start coming out with pieces with these like eye motifs, this more retro vibe. Suddenly you have a OC called Hollow, who again has a lot more of these retro eye motifs present. Like, you can give benefit of doubt, and maybe all of it, like, Ross was again tapping into his childhood nostalgia, all this stuff. But come on, like, you have a friend, okay, an artist friend. This artist friend has an OC with very heavy on retro vibes, with strong eye motifs, of strong presence of the colors of purple and red. and he named it Kid Beazle after himself. And then all of a sudden, you come out with a character that's supposed to be a child representation of yourself with also very prominent eye motifs who you also tried to name Kid. Like, you could give benefit of doubt and be like, oh, he came up with the same idea himself. Or you could be like, yo, but this is like a little sus and the stars are lining up a little too well. And we could give benefit of doubt if Beazle was not in Ross's social circle or Ross didn't know Beazle existed, but Ross knew Beazle well enough to go on a trip with him. So I'm not giving the benefit of doubt here because I'm not believing that. What do you mean? You must have taken some inspiration from Beazle at some point or another, right? But then what I don't like here is the fact that Ross named it literally the same name as Beazle's character. Come on, like naming your OC the same name as your friend's OC when your character is already referencing your friend's OC. And then here in the video, he acts like he's doing a huge favor by changing the name. Like, come on, let me go and make a yellow electric rat OC, okay? Who also happens to have big ol' red cheeks. And oh, it's because like yellow is my favorite song and I like the color yellow and my dad's born the year of the rat and I'm just gonna name it Peekapoo. Like, come on, I will get sued by Pokemon for IP infringement, okay? You can't play dumb like this. So, and the fact that he's like trying to make it seem like a favor, like, I'm doing you a favor, I'm extending an olive branch by changing the name. You shouldn't have named the kid in the first place. You knew of your friend's OC. You knew. This is why, like, watching Ross's video for me was just very frustrating because I'm gonna call it as I see it, and it felt manipulative to me. And you might be like, Kat, your head is in the clouds. Could be, right? I have nobody in my life that talks like this because they piss me off. So I'm not friends with people like this. Because when you do this type of emotional appeal where you're like, I would have supported you. You didn't support me. If we came out with our characters at the same time, I would be your biggest fan. Like, I don't get how you think my audience would hurt you. Oh, I copied the name and the character design. Well, and you're upset about it? Well, I guess to do you a favor, because I am such a good person, I will change the name. I will lose it. I will crash out on you. Straight up. I am not friends with people like this.
Care, right? I'm trying to value our friendship. So after that, I thought it was good, right?
This just to me, it's like, it just reads so manipulative. And then every time it was just like 7 minutes of talking, insert like emotional appeal. 7 minutes of talking, insert emotional appeal. That's just how it kind of felt for me listening. Maybe it's again because I have like the emotional literacy of a brick, but well, I cry at like crazy occasions, so can't be that stoic, right?
Right? They came to say hi at some conventions. Even the day right before the doc came out, the day right before, we were texting, like he messaged me about stuff. We were talking casually, it was all chill.
But yeah, basically here Ross talks about how, oh, him and Beazle were talking up until the point the doc came out, and then Beazle like switched up on him. I would also say, like, Beazle has every intention to, again, not get on your bad side. You are a big creator in the art space. You wield a fair amount of power in the creative and art social media space. People will not want to get on your bad side because it will only bode not great things for them, okay? Beazle starts beefing with you. You got an audience of like 1.5 mil that can go after him, okay? How many followers does he have on Twitter? Like 30K? Yeah. So of course, he would want to keep the peace. I feel like we all have people in our lives who we're like, man, we kind of want to cut them off. They've done some shit. But also, we will basically only suffer detriment by trying to cut them off. So it's kind of like, it's okay to kind of like just teeter the line with them, deal with them when we have to. I'm not saying that's how Beazle feels, right? I don't know. But so that's what's like, to me, that was just kind of like a moot point.
I can personally move forward with a clear heart that I put my whole entire existence on the line, that I did not copy his project.
By the way, I also want to add, man, I have a personal reference I can use, but I don't want to reel this much about myself personally on the internet. But when people swear up and down like this, being like, I swear to God on the sun, the moon, my ancestors buried 6 feet under, that I didn't do this. I personally don't believe you, but that's just my personal experience with people who've said this stuff to me. I just want to say, there's always semantics, and you could be like, I swear up and down I didn't copy, and I obviously don't think Ross copied Beazle. I just think Ross drew a lot of inspiration from Beazle. So you could swear up and down, be like, I never copied, and it would be a true statement. Anyways, I digress. That was just a little what the fuck to me when I got to that point in the video.
All right, let's talk about the AI thing.
I want to hear this. Well, I've already listened to it.
A big topic, and it's very, very heated. As you can see, let me just walk you through the process and kind of what happened.
So basically, here he goes on like a little thing about AI art. So he says, basically there was a lot of contention because he made a video in 2022 about AI art, and then he kind of concluded that it was a good tool. And people weren't happy with that, obviously. So he says it was a great tool at the time that he left social media at the end of 2022 because he is depressed and sad. Then he spent like a big chunk talking about his healing journey. This was around the 28-minute mark, talking about the Hoffman process because Fenn in his document stated Ross's like mental health retreat was framed in a way to make it seem like he got actual help and that he went to a place that did not provide actual clinical help. But Ross was trying to pass it off as if it was clinical. And then Ross was talking about the process that he went through, which is called the Hoffman process. So then he came back.
I started to see this like negative firestorm on the topic of AI. I'm a creator that just wants to see it for himself. I've always had like a natural curiosity, and I try to just like experiencing myself and have my own awareness, my own opinion about it. And I feel like that curiosity, that natural curiosity, gave so much. It helped me start my YouTube channel, experimenting with video and art, and that curiosity led me to Nima and so much good, right? But as I saw this kind of firestorm get bigger and bigger and bigger, I was like, oh, this is too volatile, this is too much, and I backtracked and I tried to delete it because anyone that touches it seems like people like getting eliminated.
But I just want to point out here how I think it's very interesting that his reasoning for not using AI is not because he thinks it's bad towards artists or that there is theft from actual artists. It's because the public views it as bad and that people who use AI will get socially wiped out, right? So that he's therefore backtracked and stopped. I just want you guys to take note of that. It wasn't because he recognized it was actually bad. But I digress, and this might seem contrary to my YouTube channel, but I don't actually fault you if you were curious about AI art, like Gen AI, I don't think AI art is art, without recognizing the consequences. If you were just curious about this thing that everyone's talking about, you used it, I would just implore you that once you find out it's bad, to stop, okay? I'm not gonna fault you if you tried it and you didn't know. I feel like a lot of people have tried stupid shit out of curiosity. People try like substances out of curiosity, and then you realize, hey man, this kind of did something to my brain. You know what I'm saying? Right? I'm not gonna fault you if you got curious, but once you knew it was bad, please stop. And the thing with Ross is that he had many people in his circle actively telling him how bad AI was. Fenn had provided screenshots of multiple people, and I believe Fenn was also one of those people who was telling Ross, hey, did you see this new stuff that came out about AI? Did you know it steals from artists? It's bad. And Ross is like, I don't know. That is then where I will have issue with you. If you knew and then you continued. If you didn't know, I would implore you to be educated, but sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, and it came out and you're kind of like, oh, whatever, right? I'm not going to fault you for that. Ross knew better. Like, you straight up knew better. You literally had people telling you, still chose to use it, and you only stopped because you got caught.
Yeah, I was acting out of fear. I backtracked, hide it, and for that, I'm sorry. I don't want anyone to think like I'm trying to be deceptive. I was trying to navigate it thoughtfully, like maybe there was something there, because I don't want this to be a repeat of every new tool gets kind of shat on and then we use it later.
This is a discussion that people have about AI art because they're like, well, when digital art came out, like everyone was shitting on it. I don't know. I was too young. I don't think I was born yet. I was born in 2000. Let me know when digital art came out. Then there was the whole thing about like 3D, using 3D references, da 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 da. In my opinion, AI art is different because it actively partakes in theft from people. I think that would be different because the fear, from my understanding, I was way too young / didn't exist when this discourse was happening. But the fear with digital art was that, oh, it was gonna take jobs. The fear with 3D model, whatever. Like the general fear in the art community is when tools come up, it's gonna take jobs from artists. And of course, people have a right to be afraid of losing their freaking livelihood, especially because we're teetering on the brink of a recession / already in one. We won't officially know that till like November. But still, right? You have every right to be afraid that you're gonna lose your job and your livelihood and you can't pay bills and then you're going to be homeless. That is a very valid fear. Stealing from people is like a separate thing. So with AI art, one of them is the fear of taking jobs, but the second fear is the theft that's happening. And that is the big thing that why I believe, as much as I hope it wouldn't become mainstream, AI art will be mainstream. It's just because there's so many people that have a lack of care and respect for artists and will continue to choose the easy and cheap way out, aka AI or generated images. I still think it will always have this like negative connotation due to the theft that it contains, right? Because again, with like content creation, there's always a discourse of stealing from other creators is normal because that's just what happens in the industry. Nobody has an original thought, yada, yada, yada. It is still viewed as bad because it is still theft.
Same thing with digital art. When digital art first came on the scene, people were shitting on it. A lot of the details here are muddy, right? It's like screenshot wars and
I would also add, like, if the details are muddy in your response, it would be also your job to clear up the muddiness, right?
it showed me how badly I do want to change and do better.
Yeah, basically he rambles about trying to be a better person here.
My partner showed me a video on cancel culture and witch hunting.
Yeah, so basically talks about cancel culture, implores us to watch the video about cancel culture. I again think it's very interesting to add this in the end of your video because to me it kind of reads like, obviously he can't go out and say that he's getting canceled to implore you to take his side. So this is the more subtle way to do this. If you're making a video where you're gonna be accountable, can you just be accountable and not subtly try to plead for your favor here? Look, there's always a discourse about cancel culture. Like cancel culture is bad, cancel culture is good. It exists, but nobody truly gets canceled, okay? Because you can go out here, be like Dr. Disrespect, have DMs leaked of you engaging with a minor, and you're still back. So if that can happen, you're chill, bro. And he spends a while talking about, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I wouldn't wish this on my enemy. It feels like you have so many people attacking you. Da 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 da. Sorry, that is so mean and blunt to say, but cool. I've been on the end of it like 5 times already, okay? I've been creating for 6 years. Whole bunch of people cancel me. This, that, and the reason. Over the course of my career, okay? Not just for my YouTube channel, for my TikTok too. Yeah, it sucks, feels bad, whatever. It'll pass, okay? You're not special because your feelings hurt because you got canceled. It happens to like every creator. It's normal. So I might sound mean for saying this, but this is just me. But when people use a very heavy emotional appeal in their videos, I just don't fall for it. So I just sit here like twiddling my thumbs, expecting more. That's kind of what I felt with this response, to be honest. And you might be like, well, Kat, you hate Ross, you came in here biased. Out of all the creators that I'm fans of, and the list is not very long, Ross was actually one of them. So I had every intent of wanting to like him, okay, coming into all of these response videos. And after looking at everything, I'm not liking what I'm seeing. Personally, this is my opinion. Don't send hate to anybody involved because that's not what this is about. But you know what I mean? Like, just when you wrap up your video, imploring people to watch a video about cancel culture, can you just say sorry and end the video? He does. He apologizes to Fen.
I'm trying to find something. I'm really sorry for any of my wordage that may have caused confusion. I do not think at all we are. Yeah, he is. You get it.
Oh yeah, this was the Kim Jong-ji thing. If you missed that part, basically he likened himself to Kim Jong-ji, and everyone's like, Kim Jong-ji's the GOAT. Why are you comparing yourself to the GOAT?
But just know that this is just one chapter in your whole entire story, and these moments are really gonna help.
But yeah, these are my thoughts at the end of his video, at least. And the thing is, I thought it was interesting. All the comments were on his side, which of course is fair because this went onto his channel. But everybody is stating that like Fen is a crazy fan, basically. Like everyone's like, yeah, this person was so pushy, like they're so creepy, da 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 da. And I'm not gonna show the comments, right? But I mean, well, you can go look for it yourself if you want to. But a lot of people were like talking about their side with Ross, etc. Like in his favor. I personally just think it's very interesting. I don't know. Like, let me know in the comment section, right? Am I crazy? Because, at least for me personally, looking at it, specifically about Fen being a fan, because that was a debate that happened. Ross, again, framed it as if Fen was a huge fan, and that Fen's side is basically that Ross, they were more than just fan and artist, they were friends. To me, it's again, just like, yo, you wield all the power, just say no, man. But you said yes to like everything over the course of multiple years. But guys, it gets more interesting because Fen puts out a response. Fen writes, "This will be my last document regarding the RossDraws situation from me." He released a video on the April 4th misrepresenting our friendship and dynamic. This is my attempt to both clear my name and provide evidence on how AI truly plays a role in his work. So Fen writes, "Hello, it's Fenixol, aka Fen. This document is my response to RossDraws' second response to the allegations I made against him back in January 2025. By the way, I'll have all the other videos I made linked down below as well, but I tried to like add context, to things so that if you didn't watch the other videos, you would still kind of figure out what's happening. AI. Back in Feb 2025, Ross responded to my document where he claims on Twitter to have experimented in the early stages where he created his YouTube video in 2022 and remained curious in 2024. He claimed that out of 600 pieces, only 5 pieces had AI influences. A thing that needs to be pointed out is that his first statement was only posted on Twitter and Blue Sky, the 2 platforms with the least engagement and visibility for his account. Ross also claims in the statement that he does not understand enough about the conversations around AI, but there is is clear evidence that proves this to not be true. He asked me personally, but also had conversations about AI with close friends, including Beazle. These DMs have already been leaked and clearly show a timeline that proves he knew the negative aspects of AI in 2022, and that context was provided to Ross all the way through 2024. Note, these DMs are posted on Twitter but may have been lost along the way. So here we have Beazle, December 2022, in Ross's DMs, showing a post about somebody generating an art piece in Sam Does Art style, where Beazle says, hey, they're training AI off specific artists like Sam Does Art, and they stole his style basically, using all his works that are online. Something that we originally thought was neat and a tool for artists has become straight up theft, and people are getting rich off it. The selfie app that came out made millions in a month, for example. And then there is a thumbs down react, likely from Ross, and also Adobe, and it's now letting people sell art, AI art based off people's stolen work. Beazle says this is AI. I do want to add, I personally think it's very interesting that the thing that is negatively reacted is the talk about the app making $1 million and not, the fact that AI is training off of people's styles, like Sam's style. Again, that's like a small, tiny little thing. I just thought it was interesting. So Ross puts a link and says, wait, damn, what the F? What AI is this? Also, AI is right now is blowing up so hard, and Beazle is sharing a negative sentiment about AI. Fen writes, Ross asked for opinions on his AI statement as he only wanted to post it on Patreon. They suggested that he needs to take a clear stance because taking the sidelines as a big artist on AI is not a good move. So these are the screenshots where people were asking, hey team, like how does this segment look? And these screenshots we've already seen in the first video, but Ross is stating that, oh, he doesn't know what to do. He wants to re-record. He doesn't know what to say. Ben writes, here I sent Ross a video about the artist Yume getting backlash for using AI in 2024. Ross ignored the post and never commented on it. Funny thing is, this is actually my video. Basically, this is a whole side thing, but this artist, showed very positive sentiments about AI and had generated AI references and then kind of like worked over it. Ben writes, in Ross's second statement, Ross briefly mentioned the AI allegations and claimed that he only experimented with AI and that he deleted the images he generated out of fear due to the climate of AI. What Ross failed to mention is that he had 24,000 images left to delete. So here we can see the screenshots. This was March 25th, 2024, almost exactly a year ago, where Ross says, yeah, I've been paying for Midjourney for like a year to generate ideas. I think one of these days we'll save the generations in a reference photo and then delete them from my Discord app in case my Discord gets hacked, trying to save another public meltdown. And then in August 19, 2024, he says, also, can we resume on deleting the Midjourney stuff? Can we make it a goal to get through it? Maybe a month? I'm at 24,000 right now, LOL. Probably referring to the generations, right? By the way, this 24,000 number is likely after, so there were more and then they were deleted. Again, this goes to show that at the end of 2024, close to the end in August, where clearly he has been educated over and over again about how bad AI is, his only concern is not receiving public backlash for his usage of AI. Not, oh my god, I realized how bad AI is. I will never use it again. Let me just get rid of these, Oh, but then we have these side by sides, okay? Where here we have Ross's sketch and then the AI prompt and then Ross's final version, which looks to be a paint over of the AI piece. So here we can see the Midjourney bot. This is April 19, 2023, where the bot was prompted to make an illustration of a girl with red skin and white hair holding a samurai sword laying in a bed of painterly flowers. Realistic anime style with soft liner, high quality detail, tarot inspired, key visual masterpiece, James Jean, brushstrokes, oil painting concept art. Ben adds, no, this was an exclusive metal print for pre-ordering his Nima statue in 2023. And that you can see this print was available on his website. Here you can see the AI generated image has just been painted over. A lot of aspects are really similar. Like this hand that was kept for the sword looks exactly the same. There was like very, very minor changes. You can see the highlight on the second knuckle here is still present on this piece. The fingers look exactly the same. Look at the sword. The sword, this detailing here is kept the same. It looks to be the same shade of blue. The angle of the leg is kept exactly the same. And so is the cloak as well. Here we can have the cloak, and here this cloak has just been painted over a little bit. The shape is still the same. You can also see in the hair here, there is this like triangle cut in the hair that is still present in the final piece. And then there's other aspects here that do look a little bit similar, kind of like the flow of the hair, what's happening over here, what's happening over here. A lot of this was kept like pretty similar as well. And then here Ross is just standing by a giant version of this painting that was an AI paint over, where it notes this was also used at Lightbox 2023 to highlight Ross as an artist alongside his peers. Now here we have the side by side where Ross's profile photo and this head turn, also all allegedly AI. More pieces. So here we have the AI prompt on the right and the final piece on the left. And as you can see, a lot of the aspects of the big cloud is kept the same. just reworked a little bit and tilted a little bit. The color values are also very similar. Like you see this sharp stack that sticks up and there's a little bit of a jagged edge to it. This looks very similar. This edge is like the same. This one, oh my god. This point as well. A little bit more red was added to the tips of these. Didn't even really bother to change it. That's wild. Here we have another one, AI prompt, the work in progress, and the final version. The character jumping out the window. Here we have the building, all of this. Here we have the side by side. So this one was 2 AI prompts, and then we have the final piece in the middle. So you can see the gate. The gate aspect was kept very, very similar in the final piece here. And then the flowers, what looks to be poppies, the orange flowers, all kept very, very similar as well. And then Fen adds, note the 3 images above have been sold at conventions during his break from social media. Wow. So here we have another side-by-side, the AI prompt in the final, and this looks to be a process video that was on his Patreon. I wonder if he showed himself painting over the AI image or he just conveniently left that out. Here we have the AI prompt, the final product, and then the Patreon process video, December 2023. November 2023, Patreon process video. Again, we've already seen this one, but the AI prompt, the final piece. Then Fen adds, note, the images above are pieces that were released on Patreon as tutorials and are now on his website being sold in a tutorial package you can see. Fen adds the links. Yeah. These images are important because he's not only selling you the final images, but the process itself. In some cases, the AI image may have influenced more of the final than we were let on. Again, I just want to remind you that these are just a handful. There could be many more artworks that have AI use. For the next part, it is important to note that Gen AI can have models meant to replicate and prompt another artist's style with the database it has built up. But here we have screenshots of Ross making a conscious decision to feed images into Midjourney, especially from other pro artists and IPs to guide his creative process and style, while trying to claim it as his own. So here we can see it's literally Ross prompting an artist by the name of Ray_17. Ray_17 is prompted again. Fire Emblem is also added as a reference. Arcane is added, and then another artist by the name of Yon Yamai is also added as a reference. Here we have TB_Choi also added as a reference prompt. Then adds, note, Ray17 and TB Choi have both collaborated with Ross in the past. Ray was the layout editor for Ross's Nima book and also joined him in this artist collaboration video. Video is timestamped, celebrating the launch of his book. TB Choi was a guest lecturer for Ross's digital art bootcamp that started in 2021.
That is literally the coolest thing I've ever seen. Those are my characters. They,
yeah, so this is the video.
You?
By the way, I do want to note this Arcane Jinx one real quick because Ross has this video 4 months ago with 117k views, which reads, how Arcane's art style made me a better artist.
What are we doing today?
Going arcane.
We're going arcade. Using this shot as reference.
Where basically he's like, yeah, I referenced this photo of Jinx. He does a final drawing of his OC Hollow. And then he basically concludes, oh yeah, Arcane made my art style better. Like, did Arcane make you a better artist, or did you run Arcane through AI to become a better artist? Better, I use loosely, sarcastically, right? I want to just really hammer this one in a little bit because this one to me is just so egregious. Using AI in your processes is already bad when you've been told this many times about how shit AI is and how it steals from artists. But on top of that, to take other artists' work and consciously run it through AI so that you can prompt the AI bot in their style. And they're not even artists you don't know. These are people you know. It's already bad to do it with people you don't know, but to do it with people you do know is just gross. And then Arcane 2, a beautiful piece of media where the creators of Arcane have actively come out and stated their stance against AI, and you still take it and run it through AI. Like, this just shows me that you give absolutely zero fucks about other people. Point blank, period. And this again to me is just kind of why I'm not fallen for his response video when he's like, then crossed my boundaries. Like, it felt like my boundaries are being walked over. So your boundaries matter, but you can take all these other artists' artwork, the artwork of Arcane, a piece of media where the creators Fortiche have actively stated their stance against AI, but you can run that through AI, right? All of this artwork, which is actively crossing the boundaries of these artists, but you're allowed to do that. But, oh, you know, God forbid somebody crosses your boundaries. So Fen provides the link to all the pieces and then adds Princess Mononoke, sorry, I'm not pronouncing that correctly, was also fed in here. And this one is notable. Well, one, because again, Studio Ghibli has actively again stated their stance against AI, but two, you can see this is January 2nd, 2025. We are in the ripe old year of 2025. 2025 and you are still doing this? And Fen adds, note, a screenshot from Princess Mononoke being fed. The date in red also highlights him still using it in 2025. Now onto the second part of this document. Am I really a stranger? Ross spent a good majority of his video trying to paint me as somebody he doesn't know all too well. He claims to have taken a chance with me only after Lightbox 2023, but this is further from the truth. I have been to Ross's house before Lightbox 2023. The scenario is in the screenshot. He didn't mention this, and an assumption was made as if I was forcing my way into his home, but I've already been there before. I have his number, he gave it to me last year. I was a Twitch mod for his editor. I had friends that also became his employees and or friends. I'd be responsible for hosting games with his subscribers on his Twitch stream. I am not some nobody or obsessed fan trying to pry my way in. Ross chose to bring me into his circle from 2020 onwards, not when he claims in late 2023. Here are my friends and I with Ross at his place after Anime Expo 2023. And all the people are censored except Ross, and we can see Ross's dog in the corner. Below would be different screenshots to highlight my dynamic with Ross. And here, this is between Ross and Fen, March 13th, 2022. Fen says, what's your Snapchat? I want to see all the rave snaps. Ross says, I don't use Snapchat anymore, lol. I'll add you to close friends, I guess. And then Fen says, side-eye, 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 let's go. I hope you're getting white girl wasted. Ross says, LMAO, nah. Did I tell you Redacted was moving in? And then Fen says, ... Do you want me to believe that y'all aren't friends, but you're willing to add him to your close friends? But you guys aren't friends. You know what I mean? Like, literally, either you have the worst boundaries in the world, or you guys are friends, right? It's one or the other. Here, 2021, Ross is like, Fen, wanna Apex? Or anybody? He tags Fen again, and Fen says, sure, I can play. And here they're talking, Fen says, you can play Redacted, and then Redacted says, you wanna go, Fen? If not, I'll give a sec. And then Ross says, oh, I haven't played with you yet. So I guess Ross is gonna play with the other person. Then Ross says, Fen, you can come hang out with us though if you want. And Fen says, okay. More DMs. This is February 2022. Fen says, the server has a catastrophic Among Us phase way back when and it should stay there. And Ross says, we F off Fen. And they're joking. And Fen says, bro, what the F? And Ross says, wow, not even Fen. And Fen says, bro, what did I do? And Ross says, I ping you sometimes for Apex. And Fen says, there it is. And then Ross, this is March 14th, 2022. Ross says, you're in Vegas, quick drive, room with Fen. And they're all like joking around in the DMs. Redacted says, you're sure it's a good idea to put Redacted and Fen in the same room? Ross says, LMAO 18 plus, do not disturb. So again, here in 2022, they're joking about their sex life, right? That's what I'm assuming is this conversation when you say 18 plus. And then Ross puts like a little laughing gif. Redacted says, that's not what you meant, you bitch, at Fen. And then Ross says, double do not disturb signs. And then Ross sends a do not disturb gif. Fen adds a clip from a stream where they hosted an Among Us game for Ross and his community. Here you can see this is on Fen's stream 5 years ago. And we can see, so Ross is this person's scissor, SSSSSOR. Then we have Fen, we have Beazle in here as well, and a bunch of other people 5 years ago. Now again, with the nature of social media and streaming, just because you guys play together in an Among Us lobby doesn't mean you guys are friends, but y'all aren't like randos, you know? Like if Fen truly was this crazy fan, right? Like you would go in a custom Among Us lobby with a fan. But again, like I'm just saying, right? As somebody who is a full-time creator, if I join your Among Us lobby, it's because I want to be there. Nobody, you know, put a weapon to my head and is like, play Among Us with us or else, you know, like I'm not gonna join if I don't want to be there. I must like you to some degree. We may not be besties, but I like you enough to join it. Here are some DMs. This is happening September 15, 2022, where Ross says, okay, do you follow the law of one? Fen says, yes, bro, I am a vault of spiritual information. And they're basically talking about spirituality. And then Ross says, oh, do you know Aaron Abke? I don't know how to read that name. And they're again talking about that person, their content, and spirituality again. Fen writes, this is one of the conversations that we've had on our spiritual beliefs. I'm showing these screenshots because they'll be important for the mental health retreat portion below. Most of my friends don't know what my spiritual beliefs are, and unless I was in a church or a religious place of worship, I don't think it's common to share one's belief with strangers. I would hope this should be enough to prove that Ross and I were indeed friends and had a level of comfortability to have a wide range of conversations regardless of the tone or how other people are perceiving things. And personally for me, looking at these screenshots, I agree. Because also, it doesn't look like to me that Fen is out of pocket, like up in Ross's DMs holding a one-sided conversation. Ross is enthusiastic in his responses, and Ross is actively prompting as well. Here, Ross says, okay, do you follow the law of one, right? Like Ross is actively continuing the conversation or starting it. I don't know how much more the screenshot goes above this, right? Like here, Ross is joking about sex. Ross started this, or technically the Redacted started it, but Ross is actively partaking in this in 2022. Like, you guys have to at least be friends. Might not be like best friends, but you guys are close enough to be having these conversations. Again, I don't know about you guys, but I don't joke about sex and spirituality, okay? Or or I don't talk about sex and spirituality with people unless I am very close to you. Otherwise, it just won't come up in conversation, or I'll shoot it down if it comes up. So Fenn continues, the mental health retreat quotes the Hoffman process, end quote. This is directly from the Hoffman process website. Is the process a form of therapy? The Hoffman process is not intended as a substitute for psychotherapy. Many people have reported that the process is an important addition to their therapeutic experience, and many psychotherapists use the process as a complementary adjunct to therapy. If you are currently in therapy, we do ask that you consult your medical doctor and/or therapist about your choice to participate. Several research studies have been published over the years as to the efficacy and effectiveness of the Hoffman process. You can read more here. Ben writes, the Hoffman process is not a substitution for real therapy. Disclaimer, both Ross and I are only talking about mental health from both of our experiences. Any questions you have around mental health and the practices involved should be discussed with a mental health professional in the corresponding field. I will provide as much context and supporting evidence as I can. I mentioned the mental health aspect in my document due to how he represented treatment, the language he chose, on top of all the videos he made about the topic. I come from a religious background where faith healing is a common belief depending on the circumstances. When I left the church, I went down the New Age rabbit hole and became very accustomed to chakras, shamanism, and energy healing. They can provide a sense of emotional and mental support, but they shouldn't be used as a primary form of healing. Unfortunately, in the spiritual community, it is a common trend to throw away clinical treatment in all forms, which is why being grounded in your beliefs is important. But if you surround yourself in this echo chamber and something is wrong, you'll have dozens, if not hundreds, of people telling you don't go to the doctor. You're just clearing the heaviness and your body is detoxing. A personal experience, I had contracted Lyme disease during the pandemic, and seeing doctors was difficult. The spiritual community I was in told me that I was detoxing from the heavy emotions I was healing, but I didn't buy it and kept pushing for a doctor's appointment. Thankfully, I did, because I had nearly gone into late stage Lyme and almost lost my ability to draw. This was also a failure on my doctor's part because I had gone to him multiple times in 6 months, only to be taken seriously after the fourth appointment. And it's moments like this that push people to seek out alternative healing methods. If I had relented, I could have been paralyzed or worse by now. So again, just throwing in my personal 2 cents, I am not a spiritual person, but I do have a bio degree from UC Berkeley. I was pre-med, okay? Guys, please go to the doctor. The doctors are very helpful. I will also add that the medical system in the US, doctors have historically failed a lot of people, right? Especially in this case, Fenn had to go 6 times to get treatment because the first couple of times the doctor was blowing him off. There's so many stories of doctors blowing patients off, etc. So I do want to acknowledge that yes, the medical system sucks and it will put you up to your eyeballs in debt for no freaking reason, because I believe healthcare should be universal and free. That's just me. Because health why is health a luxury in the ripe old year of 2025? Okay, like, why do you need a dual income household making 6-figure plus to be able to live? But I can rant about that for a hot minute. Regardless, okay, medical treatment is necessary in most cases, okay? And again, I do think that if you are a spiritual person, being in touch with your spiritual side and spiritual wellness is also important, but I completely agree with Fenn in that it is not a replacement for the doctor. It is not a replacement for therapy. You should still seek those out. It should be used as a joint thing, okay? Otherwise, you will find yourself in a lot of health issues and you're not gonna know why. Okay, this is just the worst part for me when I see it, is when preventable health issues then get aggravated and exasperated into a major issue that can then no longer be adequately treated because you waited way too long to seek treatment because you were this, that, or the third for whatever reason not going to the doctor. Again, not your fault if there are reasons why, like financial, or you just choose not to. So Fenn continues, this leads us into the Hoffman Institute and the Hoffman process. Ross tries to paint this as a valid way of healing, and the website tries to paint itself as such. But in truth, the process is based in pseudoscience and isn't recognized by the American Psychology Association. The basis of the Hoffman process is negative love syndrome, not a recognized mental health term. Yeah, I never heard of this. And uses different mental health processes to heal thought patterns and behaviors deemed negative that stems from childhood. Only a couple of teachers on their website have the appropriate title to facilitate certain processes, while the rest have degrees in a variety of different fields or even hold degrees in consciousness or shamanic psycho-spiritual psychology. I did not know you could get a degree in either of those. The common denominator is that all teachers have gone through the Hoffman process and complete a 2 to 3 year training program, which is not the same as receiving clinical training or licenses. The Hoffman process may feel legit due to a mix of different processes that are similar to clinical processes. Based on what I've seen online, and in my opinion, one of the processes that they use is very similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, a process used to recognize de-stressing thoughts and behaviors, understanding the behavior, and gaining the skills to cope with the situation and behaviors. The methodology used in the Hoffman process is to identify negative thought patterns around being unloved, especially tied to childhood, and gain skills to rewire those patterns. CBT is meant to last from a few weeks to a few months. The Hoffman process is a week long. When a method that's meant to be used by licensed professionals is in the hands of just anyone, you're typically sacrificing something along the way, and it's usually the ethics. And without the ethics, it can be very easy to label any experience that you don't like as negative and use this watered down version of CBT to rewrite the experience in your head. Again, I just feel like that's kind of a thing that we've seen with like some bigger creators. There's a couple off the top of my head where it's like they create for a long time, then they go through like a mental break where they don't want to create anymore and they kind of like question what they're doing. And then they go to something like this, something like the Hoffman process, and they come back very spiritual as if they're like a different person. And they're like, yeah, I'm a new person now. I just think it's very interesting because it is just a cycle that you will see. DMs. These are the DMs here between Ross and Fen, where again, Fen says, Ross, at this point, we've known each other for 2 years. You should understand wanting to do big things for your career, etc. It's like the full DMs between them. Ben writes, I agree that this looks really bad if you look at it from a stranger's perspective. I'm not going to downplay the words that were said, but if you know Ross, he tends to be very forgetful if something is not on his calendar. Not only that, there was some added context that was being left out. For example, this convo happened 2 weeks before Lightbox. Con crunch is real, and if you sold at a con, you can understand how stressful that period is and how much time you can lose during this lead up. There have been moments where I don't really hear from Ross all too much when it's time for cons, unless he needs my feedback and advice on merch and prints. With 2 weeks left until Lightbox, between having to plan out the logistics, make sure everything is okay on my end, and mixed in with my general excitement at having the opportunity to go to Lightbox, I got carried away. Given the way Ross was responding was no different to how we usually talk, I thought everything was fine. If I genuinely made you uncomfortable, Ross, I am sorry, and I will note that behavior in the future. By the way, I just want to add, like, this is me personally as somebody who is neurodivergent with ADHD, but this is how a lot of convos with me and my friends look like because I lack object permanence. If you're out of sight, out of mind, I start crunching right before time, like every time before I leave for vacation, I start crunching out videos before I leave for this. My DMs with my management team look like this. They're up in my DMs. Kat, don't forget this. Next day, Kat, did you send me this? Kat, don't forget to send your editor this. Like it's just because you forget. Sometimes it just be like that. So it can look pushy, it can be, or it could also just be, hey, you're somebody that kind of sucks at responding, and your friends gotta like kind of ping you like this in order for you to respond. It's bad. I'm trying to be better. I want to be a better friend to my friends, but a lot of times my friends have to double, triple text me to get me to respond. I see it when I'm driving. I'll be like, I'll respond later. Put it down, out of sight, out of mind. So more DMs. This was the one that Ross showed where Fen's like, when are you buying me dinner? And then he's kind of like spamming the DMs. Fen writes, to address the DMs where it mentions the different days and the dinner question. The different days were in reference to the video where Ross had a fan DM him every day for a year. He responded and drew his OC as a reward. Fen links the video. At this point, Ross had told us that he had some characters that were gay. This was before Ross came out though, and everyone wanted to know. We agreed that if I did the same thing, he'd reveal all of them. So here you can see Fen's day 23, day 235, day 236. Ross says getting close. Fen says, but you didn't think I'd make it this far, doing what I must for the gays. And then I guess Fen missed a day, and then he's like, day 1, fuck me. Ross says, LOL, you can resume where you left off. Fen says, okay, day 356. Is there a goal here? And then Ross says, we'll see. And Fen says, oh, so it's whatever you feel like it, SMH. And then we have DMs between Ross and Fen. This is on March 4th, 2022. And they're giving the side eye. Ross says, I owe you deets. Fen says, deets, I'm listening. And Ross says, cause you message. Fen says, oh my fucking god, finally. And Ross says, LMAO. So you wish to know the LGBT. There are a few. Fen says, give me the LGBTs. Now here, this is 2024. This is Fen says, bro, I swear you're either effing redacted. Be honest, did you smash? Fen says, we've talked about our sex life before, especially in the 11 months between these two screenshots. So the way he framed this was disingenuous. These two screenshots below seem inappropriate because Ross made it seem like we didn't know each other and that we only started to cross that step during this time period. But I established that we knew each other fairly well at this point. My friends and I talk about our sex lives with each other. This isn't that far off from a conversation with my friends, including Ross. So this was the screenshot where Ross says, I think it's too personal. I mean, personally, I would also add, even in 2022, earlier in this doc, we have like some sex jokes, where Ross was like, oh, 18 plus, haha, do not disturb. Ross was like engaging in sexual jokes. It was like light, really, really light, wasn't getting into like personal interest, but still, you're making an innuendo here. So it's been happening. Then adds, this was in regards to around gay culture, and I don't have as much experience with relationships, intimacy, and what's deemed as normal. So the question was more or less trying to get another opinion and break down some fears I have. He didn't feel comfortable with it, so I dropped it there. So now here are some DMs for the payment. Fen says, done the math, my rent and utilities is $830. This one was about Comic-Con, and I think it was Anime Expo, where Ross was like, oh, just come and stay for the month. And Fen was like, I can only stay for the month so that I work Anime Expo, stay 3 weeks, and then work Comic Con if you pay for my rent from my home because I'll be gone for 3 weeks. I need to still pay rent. And if I'm going to be in LA, I'm not working. So would you pay for my rent so I can stay? That was the screenshot. Fen adds, in my opinion, this was an attempt to try to make me look like this rude, aggressive, and ungrateful fan. This is normal between me and Ross. My friends and I refer to ourselves as bitch and hoe all the time. I, however, will not use this language on people I don't know or acquaintances. This framing is also disingenuous because he's shifting focus from his reaction to me asking for the bare minimum to my language instead. I've attached the beginning of that convo below, and you can judge for yourself and see why Ross chose to show my later messages and not include his earlier ones. So here, this is where Fen says, bitch says he'll think about it, then once I'm there, you know you're gonna cave. Just pay my shit hoe. I'd also add, I'm the same way. Like, I'll jokingly refer to my friends as like bitch. Jokingly, and only my friends, okay? If I call you a bitch, well, either you deserved it or or I don't know you at all, you know? So here, the full combo that Fen adds. So Fen is pointing out how Ross showed this screenshot where you could see Fen is talking about money, then he says bitch, hoe, whatever, right? Whereas the full combo is Ross initiating, being like, I might keep you, haha. And then Fen's like, well, you gotta pay me. Fen adds, keep in mind, I'm just asking him to pay my bare expenses that won't make things difficult for my roommates if I were to stay for the entire month. Below, I just want to further highlight the dynamic and language between me and Ross, as a couple of people thought my use of the word bitch and hoe were off-putting between strangers. So here, this is what looks to be like July or June 2024, where Ross shows some art piece. Fen says, damn, this hurts in a good way. Ross says, I know, bitch, I just started. So Ross is literally reciprocating, calling Fen bitch. And then Fen says, bro hands me a well-rendered piece and says he just started. Fuck off. Quote, it's just a sketch, end quote. Like, that's like a compliment, right? And here they're kind of talking back and forth about characters again. And then here Ross says, so redacted message me about Lightbox. Were you expecting compensation for this one? Sorry for the miscommunication. I had some volunteers come up. Fen says, LOL, no, was just curious. I'm happy to volunteer. I just had the thought and wanted to be sure. And this was about the first Lightbox, so October 24, 2023. Fen writes, Lightbox 2023 was unpaid. The issue with Lightbox is that I found out through other coworkers that my coworker for the con was being paid. And I asked about that, but I didn't push for it. Ross reached out to me to clear things up. In the process of trying to clear things up, by saying he had some volunteers come up, he heavily implied that if I was seeking compensation, he'd replace me with the volunteers. And this was the day before I flew out. I was okay with it, I was just asking a question, but it doesn't sit right with me to threaten to take away the opportunity the day before I flew out when the flight was booked and I rented out an Airbnb for a day so Ross can have that last day to himself before the con. I would also like to point out as well that I tried to ask Ross to work for Lightbox 2024 and be compensated this time, and he declined, although he had stated he enjoyed having me work for both Lightbox 2023 and Anime Expo 2024. See, this was the issue, right? The payment wasn't necessarily the true issue. The true issue was that the other person was gonna get paid. Like, that feels like shit, no? Right? Like, you find out that you volunteered and he was like, oh, I'll take your free labor, but he was willing to pay another person for the same type of labor, like working the convention. That is the issue. And I think a lot of people miss that. Feels like shit. If you had everybody be volunteers, I would still say at the size that you are, you could afford to pay them. Please pay your employees. I like watching guiltily like vlogs from other artists where they talk about their convention, and I see much smaller artists paying their volunteers. Well, they're not volunteers because they're paid, but still, they pay their help. Come on, bro. You're telling me at 1.5 million subscribers, you can't pay your volunteers a couple $100 for the weekend? Come on. I know you make way more than that. Saying this colloquially because I don't want to get sued. I don't know how much money Ross makes, but I am very, very certain that if anybody else in his position with that many subscribers who sells, you know, all these prints, whatever, you clearly can afford it. Okay, my assumption is you can afford it. So here, Fen says, do you want my lovely assistants at Lightbox? Paid this time, got ignored. Then Fen sends my video being like a general consensus of the views of AI art now. And Fen says, cough, cough, Lightbox. And then Ross declines. And then Fen adds, to make it clear here that I was only paid for Anime Expo 2024, and that was after I had to argue with him over payment. He had brought on another helper after day one of AX and offered him payment with no issues or complaints. When I asked for payment, he responded, quote, but I can take you far, end quote, and quote, I pay people 99% of the time, end quote. We ended up having a dispute over this. He did pay for Anime Expo after our little argument, but he refused to bring me back on again once payment exchanged hands. As a friend with experience, I shouldn't have to argue for payment, especially if you are so willing to offer payment for other people. Guys, this, I feel like, again, both of these is the point that most people missed. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people miss a lot of stuff from Ross's video, and this is why I personally have a issue with the videos that go very, very very heavy into emotional appeal because very empathetic people who are easily manipulated, and this is my personal opinion, right? I don't know Ross, etc. Will fall for it though, right? They'll say they'll be like, oh my god, he's crying. I'm on his side now, and I feel like you just end up missing a lot of points that are made. I feel like for me, when people make very heavily emotional appeals, I listen double time into their words. Like if I was just kind of like half-assedly listening, now I'm locked the fuck in because what are you saying that you're trying to hide with these emotions? And you guys might come for me for being so cynical in this regard. We're like, Kat, normally you're optimistic. What happened? I've had so many experiences with people like this. I am so jaded. I am so jaded. And I wish I didn't have this many experiences with these types of people, but I do. It's sitting in the forefront of my mind. Like I can clock this from a mile away. And a lot of people missed some important points. Like again, Fenn's main issue is the fact that other people were getting paid and Ross was so willing to pay them and he wasn't willing to pay Fenn. And you might be like, well, maybe he doesn't like Fenn, da da da. I just want to bring up the fact that why is Ross so hard pressed on paying the black guy? You know, I'm not trying to bring race into it, but I will because it's just odd. You know, I don't know the race of the other employees, but it just reads some type of way to me, right? Because like, you know, like why is the black man fighting so hard to get paid when it's so easy for you to pay other people? Maybe I'm looking too much into it. Just wanted to mention it again. Ross literally said that in his video, in his own video, where he was like, Ben traveled far, had travel costs, and my local employees I paid. What about the guy that had to fly in? You know, you weren't willing to pay him? I just feel like a lot of people miss that. But here, Fenn is asking for the badge, and then Fenn adds, when it comes to the badge for Lightbox 2024, I wanted to borrow it for a day, and it was for a couple of hours at most. I gave the badge back to him before I left. I was even offered to hang out with him and his group for Halloween, but declined because I had other plans. The free badge for other cons is very misleading because it implies he does this often, but it was only for Lightbox. I also knew he had spare badges available because he always orders extra badges for friends to use and cycle through to visit cons for a bit. At Lightbox 2023, Ross even gave away some of his spare exhibitor badges he didn't need to people waiting in line. I will also add, this is typically like a common practice from my personal experience attending cons. Again, I attend cons as a creator that is invited by the business, like a brand will invite me, right? And they just have a bunch of spare badges. And I will borrow it for a time window. So I will borrow it and then I will literally give it back to them. And the way it works is like one of the employees will walk me out of the con so I can tap the badge out. I will hand the badge back to the employee and they'll just take it back in, you know? Not trying to name names, I'm not trying to get any businesses in trouble, but it happens. It's normal. So you have to think of Ross as a business. He is a creator, yes, but he's a creator-run business. The RossDraws brand is a business. They don't even table in Artist Alley because they're more business. They table in like Exhibitor Hall, etc. 16 ways to improve. Ross didn't want to show you these 16 ways to improve, so I'll do it. For the sake of transparency, I redacted one of them because they were truly personal and involved other people. For some context, during my time helping Ross at AX, Ross would ask my opinion, but if it's for something that he doesn't want to hear, he'll dismiss me. If I try to bring in a different perspective and his other friends or employees are there, they will try to fight me on my stance. An example scenario that happened at AX, Ross was upset that his sales weren't as good as he has hoped, and he kept trying to figure out what the problem was and how he could fix it. He asked for everyone's input and I gave mine. Quote, a part of me thinks it has to do with your pricing and your inventory. You claimed during your last sale before your hiatus, you'd be getting rid of everything and coming back with all new inventory. So your diehard fans probably have everything they need. New fans probably don't feel like $30 is worth it for a print from an artist they don't know, end quote. And then Ross proceeded to cut me off and say that he's worth it. But it's not about being worth it. You told your fans one thing and didn't follow through. We're practically in a recession, so new fans will have a harder time to justify spending $30 on a print from an artist they don't really know. And suddenly it was 3 against 1, with everyone telling me how the price shouldn't be an issue because Ross thinks his art is worth it. There's nothing wrong with believing in the value of your art, but you have to meet your audience halfway because at the end of the day, worth doesn't pay your bills. Your customers do. Ross even tried to justify that his sales were poor because he wasn't in the Artist Alley. He claims that's where his people are, but he is almost never in the Artist Alley unless it's a new con he hasn't been to, which is rare. By the way, this is, in my opinion, how you lose money in a recession. Again, we're on the brink of a recession, and the way the recession works is like the GDP needs to be down for like 2 consecutive months, so therefore we won't know for a while, but you end up losing money if you are in the luxury sector by not meeting your audience halfway. Fen spit facts in terms of a business perspective. And of course, you don't want to hear it because you don't want to hear that you got to cut costs or whatever, you got to lower your prices. It's going to be a hit to your ego. And I think this is a separate issue with creator brands because a creator sometimes is too emotionally tied to their brand. I think emotions are good. I know this video is coming off as if I think emotions suck. They're great. But when you are too emotionally attached to your brand, it means that you then can't make business decisions that will keep you afloat for the long run. Okay. And this is what is happening with other luxury sectors. Art is a luxury, and so are other sectors. Have you seen the nail and hair crisis going down? Okay. If you're somebody that likes to get your nails done, likes to get your hair done, and lash techs, all the lash techs, nail techs, and hair colorists are crashing out on TikTok because they aren't making money anymore. Because you know why? There was a huge boom of them during COVID when everybody was at home learning new skills in COVID because they got time to kill and they're trying to make a little bit of cash on the side. Okay, the economy was good after COVID because people were spending money because they were cooped up for too long. People were spending money. People were treating themselves, getting hair, lashes, nails. The luxury sector was booming. And then the economy is in the toilet right now. So people are trying to save money. And as a result, they're cutting luxury out of their budget. Okay. Luxury including art, lashes, nails, etc. Beauty things because it is considered a luxury. It's not necessary. And a lot of these lash techs, nail techs, whatever, they're not willing to meet their clients halfway. They're not willing to like cut costs, lower prices, whatever. And they're upset on social media about not making money. Now, on one hand, I do understand that you need to be paid for your services. And if you are a skilled service, you deserve to be paid more. But on the other hand, so in terms of Ross, because you have a brand name, you can get away with charging more than a small artist could because you have a brand name. But at the end of the day, for a lot of people nowadays, due to the recession happening, they have a line in the sand of what they are unwilling to pay for. And right now, people are unwilling to pay for $200 for a set of lashes. Okay. People are unwilling to pay for $150 for a lash fill every 3 weeks because it's just too expensive. So, unless you are willing to at least meet them halfway, which is what Fen is saying, you will just not make sales because people are trying to save money. People can't even pay rent right now. Okay. What do you mean buying a $30 print? Again, I do think for artists, you should charge your worth, whatever. You do have to know. You do have to know in this economy right now. In this economy, people will just not buy it if they can't afford it. So you can choose to hold on to your moral high ground of I am worth this amount. You just will also acknowledge that you're just not going to get as many sales. That's it. Ben writes, Ross is surrounded by yes men and will remove anybody that tries to hold him accountable. Everything I've mentioned on this list, I have talked about with him in person or online in some capacity, but he just brushed me off. I want to come to him again with everything because I believe that friends shouldn't be afraid to call each other out. This isn't me telling him how to improve, but have him be aware of his behavior and how it impacts others, especially since he's always surrounded by people who will only validate him. So yeah, this was my theory when I was watching Ross's video too, because like either Fen is absolutely insane and dropping this massive like 12 bullet point thing in the DMs, or it was a situation similar to me and my ex where you brought it up a lot in person and they were just ignoring you. So now you're like, okay, I'm just gonna dump it all on you at once, so then you will actually listen and then we'll go from there. So the DM reads, Hey man, and this is from Fen. I'm gonna be really blunt, but it needs to be said. There are just some things that have been on my mind that's very problematic. I don't want to be a yes man. I'm saying all of this because I think you can change, not to bring you down. But I'm aware this won't be taken the right way either. This is November 16, 2024. You kept cutting me off when I said something you didn't want to hear or just said sure to tune me out. 2. Your download, quote, we're here to support you, everything is for you, end quote, is so problematic because it's not true. I'm very spiritual, I believe in all the woo, but if you don't stay grounded, you verge on spiritual psychosis territory. 3. You treat people as actual props to enhance your life, rather as people with their own lives and issues. You wanted me to stay in LA for the whole month for San Diego Comic Con, labeling it as a vacation, when I'd be working for you for free and removed the opportunity because you didn't want to pay my rent and utilities. $800. My bills don't just take a vacation with me. I had to work overtime for a month to make sure I could go out there initially. 4. You even justified going to dinner with Redacted because you wanted to talk to somebody who loves you and that it will generate good karma. This isn't what people say when they genuinely care for others and the things they do for them. I'm not spiritual. Point number 4 reads really weird to me. I want to talk to somebody who loves me and he'll give me good karma. This again reads to me as like, what can this person do for me? Like, I don't know. Like, I go hang out with my friends because obviously they love me, but I love my friends too. Like, I want to hang out with my friends because, like we just have a good time together. I'm not looking to like generate good karma into the world or something. Maybe I just don't get it because I'm not spiritual, but I don't know. 5. Stop comparing yourself to Kim Jong-ji. You are not him. He is dead. Let him rest. Your work is nothing close to his. Your audiences are very different. 6. You are not that guy. You keep trying to be that artist to break the mold and make it big, but you don't even know what that looks like. You kept pushing for all these big milestones, they didn't satisfy you, and you burn out. You could read number 6 as kind of harsh. True, it could be kind of harsh, hits home. I feel like honestly though, some people can take these types of things, some people can't. If I had a friend that recognized all these issues with me, I would hope you tell me. Please. 7. Because of that, you're not true to yourself. You talked about how Nima was your baby and how important she was to you, but dropped that project for whatever reason. People keep asking about the anime you keep raving about, and I don't think I've heard you mention anything about the statue. Ooh, I don't know what statue Fen is referring to, but it might be the one. So Ross made a Nima statue a while ago and did like a little pre-order for it or whatever, and just people have never heard anything from it since. It might have been a Kickstarter. Did any of you guys back it? And if so, what's the status of it? Because it's been years. 8. You think you're known for world building and OC creation, but you're not. You're known for fan art. The world building stuff is still relatively new, and your designs are starting to come across as the same. 9. The majority of your guardians are essentially naked. The only one that's wearing clothes is the black girl, which as a black person just makes me feel a type of way. Especially when you consider the fact that you stripped away her afro features as you developed her design and gave her more Eurocentric features. She had a fro and darker skin in the initial design, but you made her so much lighter and pushed her fro down to mimic the hair of a lighter skinned woman. Throwing in my 2 cents about 8 and 9, personally, I think Ross is known for red skin, white haired characters. Speaking as somebody who purchased one of his art books, because I like buying pretty art, you know, I just buy a lot of art books, but yeah, I knew they had names. I didn't know anything deeper than the names. So yeah, I think what Fen is saying is true. Anyways, point number 10, your dislike of Sam is being ego-driven and very much narcissistic. You essentially saw him and his growth as a threat and didn't like that he had a similar OC, was Asian, and even took it to the point where you didn't want him to be gay, because you at least wanted the gay thing. You're also so used to being at the top, but this isn't a competition. I think point number 10 is very interesting. I did talk about Sam in the beginning of my video, and Sam sung high praises for Ross. I just think it's interesting. 12. Mentioning the gatekeeping people again with Lightbox. Point number 11 was redacted. You tell me if there's anyone I want to meet, just let you know and you'll introduce me to them. You haven't done that. It feels like you go out of your way to avoid this, which isn't a good look when that was something you offered to do, especially as a form of alternate payment. 13. You were genuinely mad when I brought up the payment at AX, but offered to pay redacted without a second thought. Yet you thought saying, quote, I can take you far, end quote, was a valid reason to not pay me, when you've already proven that you won't hold up your end of the bargain. I've already done work for you already, yet that isn't good enough. Also saying, quote, I can take you far, end quote, is quite literally just a fancy way of saying I'll pay you in exposure. And I know damn well you wouldn't dare work for exposure. So why is it okay for me or anyone else who works for you for exposure? You almost gave redacted my phone number without my permission. I don't know redacted. I'm very particular about my phone number. I had to convince you to give him Instagram instead. 15. You did a last chance print sale before your hiatus, saying that people may never get the chance to obtain these prints again, then came back with all the same prints. I tried to explain this to you at AX for why your sales weren't doing so hot, but you kept cutting me off. 16. This feels like because I don't have a big following or a successful business that I don't know what I'm talking about, so you tune me out very easily. But if something is true, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Not saying you have to believe me outright, but actually listen to what people say, and if it's true, it'll stand up to scrutiny. And Ross responds. So Ross says, no, TBH, I appreciate this. Thank you. As you know, everyone is going through their own journey and facing their own challenges. Everyone has their own truth and their very individual path to learn. I think I felt safe enough to yap around you because I felt a non-judgmental, friendly aura. So I felt I could open up since we're all going through things. Isn't it a nice idea to find someone you feel safe around to let your guard down that you won't feel judged with? Stepping out of this real quick. Does that mean you're friends? Come on. I'm gonna crash out. You felt safe enough and you trusted Fen enough to talk about personal stuff with him, yet you in your video is saying he's a stranger that's just a big old fan. Come on. Basically, the reason why I'm like crashing out about this is because the crux of Ross's response is pinning on the fact that he made Fen look like a fan. And that is the crux of his defense. He swept the issue of payment under the tiers and being like, Fen's intruding on my boundaries, da 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 da. That is the crux of his argument. I am not believing it. I am not. You are not selling me on this because out of your own mouth, you said that you felt comfortable and you trusted him enough to talk about personal things with him, to literally yapping about my fears, ugliness, my struggles, my darkest thoughts, da 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 da. You were comfortable enough with this person to say all of these things, your darkest thoughts, and you said that Fen's a fan. Make it make sense. Either you have no fucking boundaries and you talk about everything with everyone and your personal shit with anybody, including fans, or you and Fen were at least friends. Make it make sense. So yeah, here basically Ross says, I'm not gonna block, unfollow, or anything because I feel like I'm capable of hearing and processing this. However, I'll need to set a boundary and distance myself from you to protect my space and energy. So I think we should revert back to more distant acquaintances because asking about my sex life and asking if I'm effing my friend is too far and crossing the line for me. It's fair. That could be Fen crossing boundaries. It could also be Fen misreading how close they were. And personally, if you had made jokes about me having sex with somebody in a room, right? In 2022, Ross was like, oh, 18 plus, do not disturb, haha. I would assume that I could ask you about your sex life. And then Ross writes, I was not aware I was coming off as I didn't want to introduce you to anybody at Lightbox, and you're right. We should have discussed payment upfront to avoid any gray areas. I will hold that one up and do better next time and be more aware. I had the intention to want to help connect you with somebody if it was in my power, but maybe the con stress took precedent. So if there's a clear opportunity in the future, I will do better. Thank you for expressing your truth and giving me a chance to see this and grow. I appreciate your great work you've done for the booth and my brand. Good luck on your endeavors. By the way, again on the friend thing, if you say revert to distant acquaintances, then it means you currently were not distant acquaintances. So you guys were friends. Here is Ross's response to my list. Clearly, he felt a type of way about this, which is fair. I'm blunt. I know it. My friends know it. This isn't the first time I've been blunt with Ross or any friend. This isn't about being perfect, though, but about taking the baby steps to change. If you see your friend do something toxic, are you going to let it slide or are you going to say something? Context matters, and I'm not some stranger with a list on how Ross can improve so he can meet my expectations. But I know I won't convince everyone. Things to note though, Ross does admit he saw me as somewhat of a therapist, and yet the irony is not lost on me that if he saw me as a therapist, why were these sudden hard boundaries? And then this was Fen's final response, writing, listen, I always try to offer a very non-biased opinion on what people tell me because I know everyone goes through something. If the circumstances are right, it's very easy for me and anyone else to end up in the kind of position that we judge people for. That being said, I will still call things out because it's doing a disservice to the people I interact with if I let things slide. I can understand how it feels to see a list of things about you that gets called out, but everything I had written on this list is everything that happened at AX this year. This isn't something that's been buried deep down for years. It's recent, and I did try to confront you and advocate for myself while I was there. I think it's weird to claim the sex life stuff is your hard boundary when I only asked about redacted last week. The irony is also not lost on me that you just admitted to treating me like your therapist, but you're uncomfortable with the fact that I asked about your sex life when you were bragging to me about redacted, and you kept pushing me to go to WeHo to find guys. It's giving, quote, rules for thee except for me, end quote. I'm not saying that to argue your boundaries, but it's a bit hypocritical, especially if you claim you need to protect your space and energy for something I rarely even ask about in the years I've known you, and over a subject matter you brought up. I will admit I definitely could have taken it too far, but just like how you admitted to being comfortable enough with me, I thought we were comfortable enough for something like that to be a non-issue. I'm also just like this with everyone, even when we were all there at AX 2022, redacted ripped on both of us. Either way, I had fun working the booth and meeting the fans, but if this is where it's at to protect your peace, so be it. I just had to call out the hypocrisy over the boundaries because, again, no one is perfect. Whether or not you agree with me for everything is a you thing, but I think it's worth it just to take what I have to say into serious consideration. My closing thoughts. I do not blame anyone for being doubtful of me through this whole process. I could have handled certain aspects better, and I will reflect on the situation as a whole. I try my best to be clear and concise as I can be throughout the second document. If there's anything that's unclear, I don't mind trying to clarify something. Though this will be the last time I make a statement on the situation, and we can hopefully move forward and heal from this. Oh, the other party that's involved in this, Beazle, comes out and makes a thread. So this is, from what I've seen, the first time Beazle has talked about this. So hilarious to see RossDraws get caught with DMs and receipts and so many lies, yet he thinks people are still gonna trust his word with no proof of anything at all. I just want to point out that I have never once made a public statement about him plagiarizing my work, never made a video about it, never made a stream about it, but also I've never even said to him in words that I thought he was copying me. Only other people have speculated on the similarities publicly. I'm one of them. But he insists that I kept pushing on the fact that he was copying me, and that is why I was mad. At the time, I just asked him not to use my character's name. That's it. On this specifically, the work Ross showed me on that trip included a music video animatic that was completely different from what I started to see after the trip, which again is why I really never said he was copying me. It did, however, start to become apparent that after the trip, Ross began using more and more similar themes and motifs that I had been using, stuff he wasn't doing before the trip and didn't talk about or show me, and yet I still didn't publicly speculate about any of this. That trip was a nightmare. RossDraws publicly humiliated me multiple times in public as well as in small private businesses. messages. He degraded others. He didn't respect personal boundaries I tried to establish. He attempted to emotionally manipulate me and skew my words in arguments where he yelled at me in public. And he is now misrepresenting a private conversation we had. I have receipts and notes dating back to this trip, as well as conversations where I was telling friends what was happening on the trip at the time. Lucky for me, I wrote down our conversation almost word for word directly after it was over, and after he left the hotel room. Also, during that Japan trip, I wrote down all the fucked up shit he was doing in public and how many boundaries he crossed by acting up in another country. And yes, I was still nice to Ross even after all of this and after the trip because I still believed in letting people make mistakes, and I give my friends a lot of chances to grow. But when I read Fenn's document, I realized his behavior spread out a lot further than just with me. And then Beazle shows, oh, the stories we will share. And Japan trip, September 9th, 2024. And you can read ... was for me, but Ross basically, and it is a notes app. Oh, if that leaks, man, that would be crazy. Citri writes, he is still being a problem. Sad for people, I think he's lost his way. And Beazle adds, now he's just misrepresenting a private argument we had in Japan, but also he's misleading people into thinking he wasn't close with Fenn, making Fenn look like he was some nosy, pushy superfan, but in actuality, they were friends and he used to talk to him on a personal level about personal things regularly. And here a post was deleted, but Beazle writes, the day after the drama is when people sent me a lot of information I've never heard, including DMs and things that affected me directly. Irredeemable, abusive behavior. My DMs blew up from multiple people sharing stories with receipts that have all been mostly put out there online. And then in another post Beazle made, Rio writes, I don't understand how you can build a huge platform based on the fact you are a respected artist and just throw it away. Beazle says, because he has no real respect for anyone else, peers, nor his fans. He only cares about himself and how he feels. And personally, that's kind of the vibes that I get. It's really like what Fenn said, do to thee, but not to me type thing, where Ross keeps talking about his boundaries, and like, of course, everyone's boundaries are valid, right? I think to an extent, though, if you are implementing boundaries but not respecting other people, I would then question you, which is what's happening here. He is so gung-ho about his boundaries, this, that, and the third, protecting his peace, but he is not showing the same respect to other people. He's taking other people's artwork, people that he knows, running it through AI, which is so violating to have AI generate stuff in their art style. And then on top of that, again, like being willing to pay other people but not being willing to pay Fenn and the other things that I've already mentioned. It's just showing like only a care for himself. And again, him coming out and making this apology video, because he's getting canceled, right? It's because his initial statement that he made trying to downplay his AI usage wasn't good enough for people, so he had to make another one. It's again to protect himself. But by the way, that was completely ignored. One of the allegations towards Ross was that he's racist. That one time they had a dinner together and it was a K-barbecue dinner and Ross was like, oh, we should all be seated by our race. And he sat all the Asian people together, all the black people together, etc., all the dark people together. There was that. So did that happen or did that not happen? And then again, Fenn is a black guy and the black man was the one that you struggled to pay. You could be racist. You could also just because you didn't want to pay this one guy. But again, we have to acknowledge that, hey, not wanting to pay your black employee is racist. So there was those allegations. They were never addressed. By the way, again, I do want to add, in the beginning of Ross's video, he was like, oh, I only felt like the AI allegations were worth addressing. Everything else was petty drama. So you allegedly being racist is petty. Again, I would just love to see his explanation for the dinner because multiple people were at that dinner that confirms this happened. Yeah, it is alleged, but multiple people at that dinner have confirmed that it has happened. So did that happen? Did you see people by their race? Because that's not funny. And people might be like, Kat, you're too sensitive. In my personal opinion, if you're truly funny, you don't have to be racist to be funny. And do you know how it sounds like? It sounds like segregation, okay? If you start seating people by skin tone. That is literally what we abolished in America, guys. What do you mean? So, that was still ignored. Apparently it wasn't important enough to address at all. So my final thoughts about this, to summarize this 2.5-hour recording, guys, Ross made a second up statement. So the first thing was the AI, okay? So the way the entire thing played out was that Fenn accused Ross of using AI. Ross made a response on Twitter stating, I did use AI, I only used it in 5 pieces. More shit came out exposing that Ross had 24,000 generated images on Midjourney. And then Ross had to put out his video where he was like, yeah, I only wanted to address the AI because I felt like everything else was petty drama. And then about the AI, I felt like it's not a big deal. I went offline in 2022. I came back in 2024 after working on my mental health. And I realized everybody said AI was bad. So I didn't want to get canceled. So I backtracked and hid it. And as a result, I'm sorry. And I have to acknowledge, yes, admitting that you got scared and backtracked, you admitted it. That's good. You took accountability for what you did. I feel like he still downplayed it though, because more shit came out, right, in Fenn's response, where we found out he was generating images and painting over it and passing it off as his own work. And he was still generating images in 2025. And he was also taking artwork of artists that he knows, running it through AI and other IP like Arcane and Studio Ghibli, IP that have come out and stated that they are very against AI. It just shows me that he has no care for other people and no care for other people's boundaries, and his only reason why he came out and admitted everything is because he experienced too much backlash. He tried the small little response to try to get people off his back, didn't work because more shit came out. Now he makes this video coming clean because he has to. He didn't come clean because he wanted to. It's because he had no choice, because publicly he is getting wiped on the internet right now. People are up his butt about his AI usage. And in the video, he still didn't fully admit to everything because the AI paint over feeding his friend's stuff into AI. Come on. That is like the lowest of the low on the scum bucket for AI. And selling the prints as well, right? Like, bro. Now, the second thing was the thing about Beazle, which is like the kid Beazle and then the OC Hollow that Ross made, where the way Ross talks about the entire situation for me reads so manipulative, where he makes a theme seem like a big old coincidence that his OC happens to look really similar to a friend's OC, a friend that was so close to him, they went on a trip together. You don't go on trips with just strangers, okay? His OC had the same name as Beazle's OC, and they shared the same elements too. And then he was like, I'll do you a favor by changing the name. The name shouldn't have been fucking similar in the first place. You should just pick a different name. But there was that whole thing. And then the thing about Fen, which is the crux of the video, where Ross spent the entire time painting Fen as a stranger and stating that Fen was crossing his boundaries and making Fen look like a pushy little fan. And personally, after reading Fen's document and even the screenshots that Ross provided, even the shit that Ross provided, to me, it reads like you guys were friends. Sure, Fen offered to volunteer one time, but you didn't want to pay this man. You paid other people. You were completely chill paying other people. You were quick with paying them. But for some reason, with your friend Fen, the black man, by the way, you had a really hard time paying him. And that wasn't addressed in the video. In Ross's response, it was briefly touched upon it that, well, Fen's pushy. Fen's a pushy fan. And then there was so much of that response video was spent trying to paint Fen like a fan. That's how I felt in the video anyways. That it felt like the actual substance was very minor. But yeah, I personally am not buying it whatsoever. Look, at the end of the day, he is so gung-ho about trying to be a better person and working on being a better person. I hope he can be a better person. I hope we all can. Look, we are all flawed human beings. I hope we can all move on and be better people, and I hope he can be a better person. Seeing the video as of April 4th, to me, it really just reads as somebody who is cosplaying accountability, where he got called out, so therefore he had to respond. And even with the AI thing, it wasn't because he realized it was stealing from artists and it was bad, but he had to apologize because he got called out for downplaying his original response, right? Like, it was only because his hand was forced that he had to take accountability. But it didn't feel like genuine accountability to me, because genuine accountability would be you fully fessing up to everything you did, first off. But secondly, also, like, not because all of the internet basically is pointing a weapon to your head, being like, fess up or else, So that's my final thoughts. I hope he can be better, maybe mature a little bit, and then realize that, hey, the criticisms people are providing you is valid, and that AI is bad. Please stop using it in your art processes in the ripe old year of 2025, okay? And be better. That's what we always hope for. Same with everyone. Anyways, send love to everybody involved. At the end of the day, this video is not for sending hate to people. If I catch y'all hating on anybody involved, that's not the case of this whatsoever. Again, I will acknowledge I was very biased in the recording of the video. You can hear it in my voice. If anything, I should have been biased towards Ross, but I wasn't, because after seeing this, my brain cannot process some of the stuff that's happening because it's just so different from what I would have engaged in such a scenario. But anyways, let me know your thoughts down below. For those of y'all that leave bullet pointed timestamps, have fun with this one. This is a long video, but I would love to read it. And yeah, my skin's getting better. I have foundation on. Some of y'all are like, Kat, your skin looks great. Thank you. I do wear foundation. Almost all my videos, you can tell when I don't wear foundation. Some of my videos, I'm not wearing any makeup. You'll see it. But yeah, so hopefully you guys like this video. If you do, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Don't forget to check me out on Etsy. I have art for y'all, and on my coffee, I have free resources for you guys. And yeah, I do stream on Twitch 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Saturdays at 6 p.m. PST. I hope to catch you guys there or another video. If you know this is the Chinese hand symbol for 6. I don't know. It's not call you. It's the number 6. If you know, you know. Anyways, I hope to catch you guys over on my other socials or in another video.